Great. So hello everyone for another webinar with Gable. Today we're talking about how to design workplace programs that actually drive results. Very exciting topic, I would say. And we'll start with just getting to know each other while everyone's trickling in. If you can share, obviously, your name, your role, company, and where you joining us from would be great. And for those of you that are not familiar with Gable, we are the workplace operating system. I'm Lisa, I'm the CEO and co-founder. We are a fully integrated solution for seamless hybrid, remote, and in-office management. So basically, wherever work mode your company is, we got you covered. We have 4 key pillars of our platform. First and foremost is access for 14,000 co-working spaces globally on demand for remote employees to book space. The second is event orchestration to organize internal and external events. The third would be office management, everything related to desk reservation, meeting room booking, and workplace planning, and finally visitor management. And without further ado, I'm excited to present our speakers. I'll let Sky start, and then Brian, if you can follow.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I'm Sky Volkening-Jeffrey. I'm the Director of Workplace Experience for the College Board, and I'm based in New York City.
Great. I'm Brian Porcher, based in the Bay Area. I help look after workplace experience at Intercom and joined the company in February. So in true startup sort of experiences, it feels like 2 years and 6 months instead.
Awesome. Welcome. And as you all know, we usually have a Q&A at the end. There are already quite a lot of questions, so please join, upvote your questions, or of course, if you would like, create new ones. So without further ado, I'll start with Brian. You just mentioned that you basically joined Intercom in February, and you've been catching up in true startup mode. But maybe if you can talk a little bit about, Intercom's workplace strategy, and also how do you maintain consistency in the workplace experience? Because Intercom has multiple locations, and how, you're even experimenting, shall I say, at this point, 6 months in, with new programs.
Yes, would love to jump in. Thanks for having us, Lisa. Really appreciate it. Love your webinars, and hopefully this one's of value to watchers as well. It's been a crazy pants nearly 6 months at Intercom, which is what I signed up for and what I love. It's been hard to experiment working a little bit backwards without first kind of figuring out like what the culture is about, traveling to different locations to see how people work similarly, maybe differently. We have 5 global offices. I'm in San Francisco. We have about 200 people here, about 450 in Dublin, Ireland, close to 200 in London, 120 in Chicago, and about 40 folks in Sydney, Australia. So that's sort of my purview, and it's been wild trying to get up to speed on all the different locations and the build outs. They've been very different across the board. So I've been on a whirlwind tour, visiting each office, Chicago 3 times, doing a proper fit out already, and then making it to Dublin and London, Sydney on the docket for next Friday. So we'll get there as well. But just interesting, we have an RTO model that moved from 2 days mandatory to 3 days per week, July 7th. So we've had this kind of fervent push to get folks in and compelling them to come in versus impelling. And those kind of sticky traction opportunities are different in each and every office. So I've been trying to figure out how we can weave some of those in. But more importantly, it's starting with the boring things, more the blocking and tackling. So when we talk about consistency, it starts with our staff and with our vendor partners. So it's been a massive push on the vendor alignment front to ensure that we do have that consistency and continuity across the globe. So that's been the biggest push in addition to the fit out so far. And I think we're in a pole position sort of seat to start that experimentation probably in September now that the rails are in place.
So that's super interesting. So basically, Intercom is actually going more on like the structured approach, basically, and the consistency, right? And Sky actually, from your perspective, it's almost the reverse, right? So you shrunk the footprint of offices. The company is remote first. Can you share a little bit about, the strategy behind this, and also how do you create, a great workplace experience when it's by design inconsistent in that sense, right? So would love to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lisa. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Yeah, as you mentioned, College Board used to have 18 regional locations across the country. But after the pandemic, like many companies, they decided that they didn't need as much space, which was true. And they reduced their total footprint to just 3 sort of selective strategic locations. And that was really a decision driven by our talent org, because just based on the nature of our work, a lot of it doesn't need to be done in person and in collaboration spaces. And so by leaning into this remote first approach, we're able to hire top talent from all across the country, which obviously makes us stronger as an organization. And how that sort of affects my role, obviously, I need to think about the folks who are coming into the office, the folks who still do need a place to work. And as you mentioned, because we are a remote first organization, I don't necessarily know what that's going to look like every day. But I think that unpredictability is something that we've turned to our advantage. I think it's really forced us to imagine what workplace experience means now in 2025. And instead of building our spaces for what an average workday might look like, we really want to design for what any possible workday could look like, because it could be the sales team or the tech team or the marketing team that walks through that door, and they all have different needs. So through investing in like super flexible infrastructure, a lot of our spaces are transformable for different use cases. Our biggest conference rooms all have movable walls, furniture that's really easy to move around. And so we can use those spaces as classrooms, as boardrooms, or even a reception space to host an internal event. I really encourage my team, the folks who work underneath me, to operate as a concierge of the workplace. So that's part technology and part human touch. My team really doesn't just maintain the spaces, right, but they're orchestrating moments for employees to experience in the office. When somebody walks in, we notice. We remember that David on the design team always needs a specific design for his work. Or a specific monitor for his work, and that the finance team likes to spread out and take over as many conference rooms as they can when they're in town. So keeping all those things in mind, I can, keep my space flexible, and really connect with the different folks who come in and make sure that they're sort of getting the stuff you need. But I think I'll leave it on the magic really happens in the small gestures. The things that people might take for granted, the things that they're missing from their home office. And so whether it's a work anniversary or somebody's just looking like they're having a rough day, that sort of personal touch point that you can have with them really solidifies that connection and allows you to give something to them they wouldn't be able to get at home.
That's really interesting, because it's almost and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, almost the reverse approach, right? In that sense, of it's like, okay, we want to be as flexible as possible, and basically there is no template, if I hear you correctly. It's like, okay, it's mostly about the experience aspect, right? And that's what every employee will remember in that sense. And I think it's a very, very cool approach. Brian, maybe a question to you as a follow-up to that is, can you talk a little bit about, you already talked about the Chicago restructuring, and can you talk a little bit about the process of designing different programs, what programs work from your, 6 months in, and apart from, employee feedback, that obviously is always very important. How do you identify opportunities, and what signals do you see that programs work? So Sky mentioned, the work anniversary reminders, or, things that make people feel special. I'm curious from your perspective, what do you see?
Yes, love this
Big
question.
question, a big
It,
question.
it's my favorite, bar none, because there's no silver bullet to it, and that's what I like. That's the challenge, and that's why we do what we do, I think. Uh, I think it's different for every company. So I've had some incredible experiences at other companies, Plaid, Cisco, Google being a handful of them. And no solution at one place has worked at the other when we're talking about things that add value and truly differentiate. And I am keen on differentiation at every turn, because that's part of the challenge, right? So it depends. It's been very different, the huge bodies of work that I've taken on, depending on the company and the needs of the company at that time, right? If we're talking about Google at the time, uh, it surprises most folks to know we did not have a blank checkbook just to do things willy-nilly. So I was the first person brought on to get our arms around perks and on-site amenities in an organized way, and started to springboard from some of the early things, which were awesome and great. But some of the things, like, we didn't know. I had some ideas early on, and one of them was by happenstance. I saw an engineer taking a nap on main campus, drooling all over the place, and this tour group was hovering over him, taking photographs. And I thought, this is probably not the best look for us from an employer brand point of view. But the purpose, there's validity in it. So how might we solve for this person's dilemma in a way that doesn't paint us in this sort of picture? So I had already researched the space and knew this new burgeoning company called Metronaps had energy pods that were this fiberglass cocoon. And in theory, it's a dental chair where you're like semi-private, able to do these things and hit reset during the day. So that was a tough task just to pilot it. So to get $15,000 from Google, 15000, not 50, 15, took me 7 pitches to eventually make it happen. And like, we thought the usual things, people could hit reset during the day, they could nap in privacy. So we tried it. It wasn't an early success, but we started to find, oh, we have a lot of new parents now. They're finding value in this. Security people working around the clock, they're finding value in it, right? So we found success, and it started to be programmed into every fit out from that point forward. But it was some tough sledding to get there, and that was just strictly from observing. And the same thing has happened at Cisco. It was redoing their company-wide recognition program, getting deep by interviewing people for an hour, well over 60 people, to understand what would people actually like as an experience versus the default kind of things that people want to help. They just don't know how. So we were able to do that. So I think it's those opportunities of finding, where can we make this transformational impact? And if it's within scope, let's do those things while we shore up the basics. But it's opportunistic, and every company is going to present something different. So I'm starting to land on a couple of concepts here. So stay tuned on what those might be.
I hope it's sleeping pods again.
Can't
Um,
can't repeat can't repeat that trick. No.
But first of all, it's super interesting. First of all, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a bottoms up approach, right? Like, you're observing and doing that, which is, I think, a lot of the opportunity, but also challenge for workplace leaders today, is that you almost need to reinvent the wheel in every company in need. But on the other hand, is the fact that, everything has to be justifiable from a budget standpoint, right? Like the 1500, it's pretty astonishing, right, if you think about this. But the things that you've seen before on a small experimentation, how you were able to implement this, I think it's really, really, really inspiring, candidly. And Sky, this is actually a great follow-up for a question to you, because you mentioned at the beginning that basically you've shrunk the amount of offices, and part of it was, we don't need them. There is no real ROI in that sense, right? So how do you advocate, but still, from a finance standpoint, why keep any office at all, right? How do you justify different programs, or at least keeping the spaces in order for people to have access for space, right? So would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, totally. Great question. I'd say, probably once a quarter, my head of finance is asking me if we can downsize any more offices. So it's definitely a frequent ask. And then, in particular at the College Board, because we're a nonprofit, our finances are even more important to us. And I have to make sure that any investments that we make into the workplace are directly serving our mission as a nonprofit to change the lives of students in America, but and around the world, and not just employee satisfaction. So the way that I do that, I find myself partnering closely with people from our talent team and the different division leaders around the company to understand how physical collaboration or the physical space that they work in impacts their team's work quality. So I've learned that workplace decisions can't happen, just on my team in isolation. I have to regularly collaborate with people on talent acquisition to understand what candidates are looking for in a work environment, and especially this new generation of talent that's coming into our workforce. And then I'm working with our retention specialist to understand and analyze the different exit interviews that we have to see if there's anything that I can pull out of there that I know I have a pulse on and I can control. And then I'm meeting with different department heads to understand, how has your team's productivity been over the last month, the last 6 months, the last year? And can you make any connections to, whether their work environment in their home office versus the in-person office that they have access to? And I'm in a unique position because obviously a lot of the work that we do is education related. And so whenever I'm trying to make a pitch to leadership, I try and frame it through a lens that they can understand. And so I frequently find myself making a comparison of our school to a college campus or a middle school, in the same way that schools need adequate facilities to serve students well and make sure that they're learning at their best ability. And they have unique collaborative spaces to develop the programs and the assignments that they're working on, is the same way that we as the College Board need a physical infrastructure that supports the collaborative work that we do, the work that we do to build those assessments and the tests that students are taking all over the country. And so, yeah, through that connection, I think leadership really appreciates. I mean, anytime you can try to use the same language that they're using to connect it to whether it's your company's overall mission or your goals as a company, that's always appreciated. But yeah.
That's awesome. And I think, at the end of the day, for you as a workplace leader, for every workplace leader, the employees are your customer, right? So the way that we want, our external customers to be treated, there is no reason why our employees should be treated any differently, if it makes sense. So totally aligned there. And I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, internal events and programs that you are leading. Brian, from your perspective, I personally hear quite a lot of workplace leaders talking about events and just the focus on how do we make connections and meaningful gatherings, right? Some are, creating a event concierge. Sky, you mentioned this a little bit as well. But some are just using, outsourced vendors or teams to actually do it, because that's the big thing now. We're doing events, right? And would love to get your perspective on, for workplace leaders who do feel the pressure to outsource or stick to templates, what's your advice for building that? Whether this is, internal or taking some creative risks to do it.
Yes, I set a dangerous standard here, I think. So take this with a grain of salt, please. It's part of what gets me constantly energized, is to, again, figure out how to differentiate within these opportunities. And at Intercom, it's interesting because it's a pretty serious workplace. The eye is on the prize, and our CEO consistently reinforces that message that we're raising the bar and we're going to be best in class if we execute properly. And with that, it sets a tone. So the things that we do, literally twice per quarter, we'll have organized internal events. So super consolidated. It makes it easier, I think, obviously, to execute, but they're not overly ornate or complex. So it's easy to do internally, but important to put a different spin on each so that they are memorable. So to Sky's point, like the worst thing that can happen for me is for someone to start seeing these events become similar and blending together. But there should be something that stands out from each one, right? Examples might be, blind whiskey tasting for St. Patrick's Day. We have the big Dublin contingent. So of course we sync with them what the proper ones are, and shipped in like this orange soda that's only produced there so that people can interact and taste or have a taste of home if they're living here or visiting. Those are the things that people really engage with and remember. So we have to fold those things in at every single turn. So it's hard for external folks to understand what those opportunities are. But when it gets to bigger sorts of events that might be offsite or more than 500 or 1,000 people, then it becomes imperative to understand like where do we draw that line, because we can only do so much. We might not have expertise in all these different areas, so that's sort of how I think about it. The team can't be burnt out, but if we have that the superpower on the team, right, where someone can run with that and do something in an hour that might take a layperson, 15 hours to do. That's important so that they have their tank filled and we can hopefully deliver something novel and useful all at the same time. So thinking back on some of the unexpected kind of crazy events, they were usually off menu. Like even if they were family oriented, there was a lot of deep thought that went into planning it. But you can absolutely partner with somebody, a third party, to help execute that vision if the forethought goes into it.
Basically, nobody knows your company and your people more than you. So why outsource that creativity in some sense, right?
Yes, in a nutshell. Thank you. That was much better.
No, I'm just trying to listen. Sky, a similar question, but I would say a bit, and especially because again, you're much more, I would say, focused and by design of your offices and flexibility on like the moments that matter. And you mentioned like basically the event concierge aspect as well. I'm curious from your perspective. Obviously, there is a lot of also focus for workplace leaders, and we hear this all the time on efficiency and optimization. So like all of these like customized things are hard, right? In that aspect. So curious from your perspective, you can share a little bit, if you still want to do those customization, what's your day-to-day looks like? How do you maintain this, relationship and visibility with leadership? You talked a little bit about this, but also making sure that you are pushing back on like the templates and just cutting costs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, second after asking if we can, reduce our space, the second most frequent ask is, how can we be more efficient, especially in this day of AI? But even before AI, I think workplace teams were probably more than anyone else always being asked to become more efficient, to optimize, to cut away the fat. So I think efficiency in my day-to-day really means making myself a strategic business partner with leadership and not just a space manager. And I know anybody who's worked in workplace in the last decade has gone through this transition, but we've seen a real move away from sort of the reactive facility management work where it's fixing a leak or screwing in a light bulb or running and cleaning up a mess. But I'm constantly asking myself every day, how can I do more with what I already have? And I think, the key to maintaining a strong relationship with your leaders who are constantly asking you to be more efficient at everywhere you can, is you're allowed to push back when you can. And you obviously never want to just say no, because that's not what a leader wants to hear. But when leadership comes to me with requests to cut our offices in half, or certainly we could do this with one less person, I try to come back with options, right? So my first option that I always come with is, well, here's the bare minimum that I could get this done with, but here's how it would impact the employee experience, right? We could operate with one office and one conference room, but it'd always be booked and nobody would be free to use it. My second option is usually the one that I'm going for is I try and provide the perfect balance of, listen, I get it that as a company, we need to look for ways to be more efficient and savings, and we definitely want to cut away wasted space. But I think there should be a perfect balance between how many cuts you're making versus and how that's going to impact the productivity of your team. And then an ideal scenario, which is my dream scenario, is, listen, if efficiency wasn't an issue this year, if you could rewind 5 minutes before the start of this conversation, and I came to you with the pitch, here's what I would want in terms of space, and here's how I think it would benefit as an org to actually invest more instead of take away. So I think it's about, as long as you're confident in what you're talking about, you can make the case to leadership always. But your confidence needs to be based in data, because that's why they're coming to you with the efficiency and cut questions, because that's what the data is showing them. So if you're ever going to push back on that, just make sure you have the data that shows that as well.
That's actually an excellent transition to my last question to both of you, which we'll talk about. We cannot do a webinar without talking about AI, I would say, and implementation and efficiency aspect here. So curious from your perspective, Sky, you mentioned a little bit about, AI, efficiency, data as well. Curious if you can share, how do you use AI on a day-to-day, if you have done any implementations? This would be one. And as a follow-up, maybe in general, the data that you are interested in looking at would be great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely use AI every day. It's funny, I think, I don't know, probably out of everybody in the business world, I'm probably one of the bigger AI skeptics, but even I can, admit where it is helpful, and honestly, like, really, really helpful. So I'm using AI every day to just try and amplify what I and what my team does best already. The human insight and sort of relationship building that technology at this point can't replace. I want to use AI to boost those skills that we already have. All my AI tools have really become analytical partners for me. They're really great at understanding space utilization patterns, or dumping a whole bunch of survey results in there and just asking it to pull out some key themes and sentiments. Or even, predicting trends over the year. What is my office usage look like next June based off of last June's usage and the different initiatives that we have going around the company. But as often as you can, use AI to free up some of your own time. I think the real goal should be to spend less time digging around in spreadsheets with your eyes glued to a screen, so that you can have more time actually connecting with the people who are in your office. Any valuable insight that I've ever gotten has come from an in-person one-on-one conversation. It's never been a pool of data that I'm looking at. I think data should really be encouraging you to ask better questions, and not just the answer shouldn't be in the data. The data should be forcing you to ask better, or just be giving you the ability to ask better questions.
All right. Thank you. Ryan?
Yes, great response. Plus wanting to all of it. I think one thing that is interesting for us at Intercom, just based on what we do in terms of our AI approach to customer service, it's pretty cool to think about trying that internally as well. So maybe at some point in time, we can start thinking about what that looks like in terms of internal triaging of tickets and responses. But it does get back to that white glove treatment. And it was eye-opening for me, just sharing an office space and eventually managing the corporate concierge team at Google when it existed. And it was like this incredible thing, again, a differentiator. But to see people like the best at their craft of just knowing how to provide this service to save people meaningful hours in their day-to-day. For us, the metric there was engineering hours saved by planning their personal things. And we had different levels of what that meant. And that was one of the key metrics that our VP cared about. How many hours do we actually save, in addition to the CSAT sort of results? So it was cool to see how that evolved. And with the advent of Google Home coming and Alexa and other things, people started having more access to information. So it became apparent to us we're kind of phasing ourselves out of the differentiator here, partially because of our product. But that has never left me with how we can still complete the last mile with that human touch. Selfish things that I use it for. One is my thumbnail image on social media. It makes me much better looking than I am, so I appreciate that. Summarizing white papers and empirical studies is huge. It saves me hours of time just getting the summary spoon fed to me so I can do something with it. The Australia trip that I'm planning, I've never been. So I have this amount of days. How should I prioritize based on these things that I like? So those are sort of the day-to-day things. As Sky said, it just frees us up for more meaningful impact for the hours that we do spend at work.
That's awesome. That's super cool. And I think I actually really never heard about a KPI that focused on like engineering like hours saved. Such a cool thought, because at the end of the day, that's you want to free up the time of that resource basically. I'm curious, are there any different KPIs or things that you have encountered over the years on that perspective or data points?
So just to clarify, like additional metrics that
Yeah.
we might have used, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So the same company, no big surprise there. Like one of the ongoing metrics was just always like empowering people to own their own shop. So within the Lifestyle Perks team, it was somewhat broad, but one of the goals that we had internally, we had many different aliases internally. So, you could be in the workplace, people ops, culinary team got loads of feedback, right? Masseuses, etc. But like one of the things we were empowered to do was to jump in the conversation and address it head on, because there could be thousands of people in these threads, right? So I think that reinforced the autonomy that we had and the trust that was given to us. But they were called center threads that we were to avoid. Like if any separate thread got up to 100 responses, like it wasn't a great look for us, and we didn't squash it as quickly as we could. If we had foresight and had already forecasted these sorts of things coming, we would have already had a reply. And if we didn't, jump on it quickly to buy us some time and then follow up swiftly.
That's an excellent one as well. And again, it's actually really aligned to a customer service in some sense, right?
That's right.
Really cool. So now we're going to move to our last piece of the webinar, which is the Q&A. There are a lot of questions, quite a few upvotes. So I'll start with order of upvoting here. And please, Brian, Sky, take this. Whoever wants to answer, just go ahead. So we launched 5 new programs and are having difficulty with traction. Any suggestions of how to maintain momentum and measure all of these under 150 employees?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. I'm not sure how applicable this will all be to your specific situation, but I think my first thoughts when I hear, launching 5 programs is that they're pretty ambitious. I don't know what the size of your team is, but I typically wouldn't try to launch that many programs simultaneously. So maybe, maybe you're just being spread too thin. So if you can, choose the 2 programs that you think will be the most impactful, and really double down on those, and maybe move the other 3 into a pilot phase. But I don't think you won't get as much benefit if you are equally spreading your effort amongst all 5 of those programs simultaneously, especially if they're new and trying to get their feet under the ground. I think sort of working your way one through one until they can stand on their own. And then I always find that it's super helpful to, and I'm sure everybody here on this call, knows the exact person in their office that I'm talking about. But I try and identify like my office ambassadors, my culture champions, the people who, even if the office was just four walls and a ceiling, they'd be there every day. They're the most excited about new programs and new initiatives and stuff. So if you can get those people bought in, they'll be your biggest, salesperson. They'll go spread the word. And as much natural buy-in you can get into stuff, I tend to find that tends to boost participation as opposed to a all email blast. Like that stuff usually gets scanned and moved on.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Brian, anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, great answer. I too was curious around some of the context. 5 is bold, which I appreciate. Maybe had something to do with RTO, if I had to guess. But I think being intentional with why we're doing each of the 5, which might not be for the same reasons. So if one of the spokes in the wheel might be, I'll use an example of bicycle repair on site, right? And we're subsidizing that theoretically. That's going to get to 7 people at a deep level that are really into this. And out of 140 people that might show up here on a Thursday, I have to ask AI the maths, but probably close to 5% on that. And like, is that okay? Like, if I get to another 5%, is that success? Yes or no? In my estimation, yes. If we can do that and like different lanes, and then we're chipping away at the broader goal of utilization on site and people being engaged while on site. So I think it's stripping the 5 things down to sort of sort out what success looks like and then treating each independently.
That's excellent. Yeah, basically part of it is just like what's the actual goal of each program and what success looks like is a very important one because they're probably not going to be measured the same, nor the outcomes are. So that makes a lot of sense. Another question is, what if benefits offered, for example, weekly, are taken for granted? And how can we add value to them? That's an interesting one.
Yeah. I think, when anything becomes routine, it eventually just becomes invisible. So, you introduce lunch on Tuesdays, the first 3 months, everybody's super excited, and then it just becomes, something they always had and doesn't feel as special anymore. But you have a few levers at your control. I think even the smallest tweak to a recurring program can add some variety, even just to the mind. It'll feel different, whether, if we're talking about a weekly lunch, maybe you're switching up the cuisine or adding a special treat, or maybe the dessert that you add with it changes every week. Or maybe you add, Brian was talking earlier about the whiskey tasting. Maybe there's some type of interactive element that you can loop in. But yeah, don't be afraid to tweak it every once in a while just to refresh it. Or this is a tool I've used before. Take something away for a short time and then bring it back. And all of a sudden it's, it's new and exciting again. So
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's true. Everything becomes a habit very quickly, but then when it's taken away, then it's been reappreciated again. So there is like both the carrot and the stick in your approach, I feel like. Love it. Brian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think simpatico with Sky, and that's like, how do we constantly reinvent so it's at the forefront and not sort of escaping, right? So things like commuter benefits, it's like, when you receive a gas card for your service anniversary, like, cool, you forget about it 2 seconds later, it doesn't do anything, right? But when you can do something with it, like maybe we revisit that and increase that amount so that people coming in 3 days per week, will peg, that perquisite back to the company. And hey, this is a pretty neat thing that they're doing, going above and beyond what I'm accustomed to. Food related, we've thought about that pretty deeply, from pantry refreshes and engagement opportunities to the core food program. So we now offer hot food, breakfast and lunch, Mondays through Thursdays. And Wednesday's a day that's strong. We get a lot of traction, but we wanted more traction. So now we're doing like an action station of food being prepared on the spot to augment the standard fare already in place. So that's sort of a nuanced thing that people will find surprising. They look forward to what that might be. So anything that can be intermittent or leading to curiosity going into that service is super important. And like Sky said, like maybe it's a pop-up barista for a series of weeks, but maybe not in perpetuity because, you know, $200 lattes don't tend to go well when you have those meetings with FP&A.
I love it. That's great. Um, one more interesting question. I think it's related to some of the things that we talked before. Is what metrics are you using, and what are your targets or threshold that you're internally benchmarking for decision making?
Yeah. So I'm in a very, very, very lucky situation in that, I'm not enforcing an RTO mandate of any kind. And what my CEO is constantly telling me is that he doesn't ever want to give the impression that we're asking people to come back. But if they do decide on their own to come back, he wants them to sort of be rewarded. That said, I still am tracking utilization and participation. But yeah, I really try and focus in on three areas. Participation, are people obviously showing up? Engagement, are they actively participating in whatever we're doing? And impact, like, is it having an impact either on our work or our culture? Are we better off as an organization because of it? I think in an ideal world for me, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna scratch that back. I actually don't have any thresholds for what success looks like in terms of participation, like a number of attendees. Because for me, if I get 10 attendees, but they are super excited, almost to Brian's point about, the bike service offering, if I get 10 employees out of my 100 who are like, love this event, and this is the greatest thing that we've ever given them, that for me has a much better and greater impact than if I had 40 employees and they all left like, cool, I was here for the pizza. So.
That's awesome. Brian?
I think space utilization is a massive push here. So I feel pretty good about our portfolio of real estate, at least for the next 3 months. But like Chicago, we just refreshed and we're already up against some stress points, I would say, for meeting spaces primarily. Just because we're growing there, and it's amazing challenge to have. But we have to like truly understand because there's a different workforce there. So they do customer support and sales primarily there. And even before the 3-day RTO mandate, it was 2 days, but they love being in the office in Chicago. And it was interesting being there because the way they worked was quite different. In San Francisco, people work generally the same, be it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the power days. But there, you had people truly on hybrid AB schedules, like changing out the talent and how they worked. So I think that's key for us to get more granular with what we're solving for and how we're treating it with finite resources and time to implement some of these changes. So I think just knowing utilization, we have a strong handle on that, but it can get better. But the conference room efficiency is something that we have to do better. And for the next fit out, which might be San Francisco, hopefully San Francisco, we need these learnings so that we can absolutely nail it. To Sky's point, like how are people working? And we need to get it mostly right. In those spaces that are true, this is what you'll see day to day, and then building in some of those modular, flexible spaces where we can change it up depending on event and other purposes. One thing that's very different here that I've never experienced before, we have so many external events hosted here on-prem. So like our business development people and anybody in marketing, like they do these things in their sleep and they make our job so easy. Like it's incredible for me to see the volume of people that we have coming through the space. So that's something where I also have to learn and then hit reset on what I think I know so that we can start designing a better experience for them when we have a proper fit out.
That's really cool. And I think one thing to call out, and I'm sure a lot of our attendees can relate, and is the fact that not just offices might be different, but the way people work and the culture within those areas are actually really impacting the attendance and the behavior, which I think in hybrid is just actually much harder, right? In that sense, because there is no blanket that will work exactly like that. Like you cannot plug and play. And that's, I think, a challenge and an opportunity in that sense. So thank you both. We're at time. Thank you for all the great attendees who came. Thank you, Brian and Sky, for incredible conversation, really cool insights. I'm gonna definitely Google the sleeping pods after this. But very, very excited. Thank you everyone for joining, and see you in the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having us, Liza. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye,
Thanks for
everyone.
attending, everyone.